Embrace HIPMAT. Embrace its academic and professional reputation that has trained over 15,000 professionals in 10 years. Embrace HIPMAT's numerous professional programs from HND to BTech, BSc, and MBA in the schools of Business and Management Sciences, Engineering and Technology, and the School of Transport and Logistics. Embrace HIPMAT's professionalism, excellence, and consistency with solid mentorship from the University of Bamenda and the University of Boya. Embrace HIPMAT's skills, development, expertise, and career orientation via workshops and academic field trips. Be part of the HIPMAT family. Visit our Boya campus at Checkpoint Moliko and Douala campus at Carrefour Yoro, Jos, Bonamusadu. Contact 683-70-1720. The Higher Institute of Business Management and Technology, the University Institute for Professionals.
Good evening, viewers. You're welcome to this very first edition of Prime Hour for the week. We are glad to have you watch the program this evening. We, as announced on our page, we're going to be looking at the unending bloodshed in the southwest and northwest regions, asking the question as to who does not want an end to the war. It's been 4 or 5 years now, and many quarters have been talking about it. Many civil society organizations have been calling for an end to the ongoing conflict in the southwest and northwest regions. International instances have called on both parties to down their guns so that they can seek ways of ending the conflict to no avail. We're asking the question this evening as to whether there are parties with vested interest to see into it that this war goes on, leaving many mothers, fathers crying and in very painful situations. We are discussing this topic this evening with our panelists who are seated already in the studio with us. We are in the company of Franklin Sone Baye. He is here for the very first time. He is a journalist, a publisher. We're glad to have you for the first time with us.
Well, if you mean first time in the studios in the studio in Douala, in the studio in Douala, you're right. First time on Prime Hour, not so right. What did we have in Yaoundé during the major national dialogue? I was there. Okay. I was there. You know the famous statement. I was there.
Yes, I remember. Okay. Yes, in our studios in Douala. We also are in the company of Fa Evis Tayong. They call him the Kangaroo Man. He is representing the CRM party on this platform. Good evening, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Leo. It's my pleasure being here today, and greetings to the level-headed panelists who are present here today, and greetings to Professor Maurice Kamto, the President-elect of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, and greetings to all the CRM prisoners who have been incarcerated in the various dungeons around for just protesting for the war in the northwest and the southwest to end, amongst other issues, with no headway as of now. But besides that, we will also be sending greetings to those who are watching us from Gunoko Village. You know, I always remember my village, Gunoko Village, and the Royal Majesty Dr. Fomoki Waters. Of course, you know, talking about national unity, we are thinking of Ndiba Lawrence, my good friend, who hails from the Meme division. Of course, we are like Ching brothers, so we call him Bekwadi Ndiba Lawrence, and a host of others who are watching us right away.
You did not extend greetings to the people of Ndian division. Very difficult moments for them.
Yes, you know, Ndiba Lawrence come from Ndian, probably. That's why Ndiba Lawrence come from Ndian. And he's residing in Meme division, to be more precise. Okay. He is from the Oroko clan. And that's why I said he's a personal friend. But you know, Ndiba William too, who is a media person, is my one and good time. You know, we've shared several things together. And you know, Betondo James, the artist, and Paolo De Plessis, who comes from Ndian division. Those are my personal, I say personal friends more than brothers. So at the long run, you discover that I have very deep relations with the people of Ndian division.
The Prime Minister is also from there. You will not send some greetings?
No, for these ones I have sent. I think it's okay. Thank you.
Tilaris Atia is in the studio with us. He's a journalist, former president for Camer Boya, and Secretary General for the Cameroon Journalist Trade Union for the Southwest region. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Leo. It's always a renewed pleasure that I come on set. The last time I was here, it was not really a beautiful one. just to apologize to the audience and to Apostle Ambi that at some point during the debate things got heated, and I don't know if I lost temper or composure. I extend my apologies to the viewers and to Apostle Ambi and to the moderator of the program. Just to say that it's been a very difficult month in the Northwest and Southwest regions. It may well be the deadliest, especially last week and the weeks preceding last week, where we had a lot of attacks. I think Brigadier General Cameroun said on the 15th of this month that the military concluded a 32-day mission in Bui and Ndonga Mantung divisions, Operation Clean Kumbo. That the operation led to the death of 4 soldiers. Several others were wounded. He said some separatists were killed. He did not give the number, but he said 3 generals, 3 separatist generals were killed in those operations. We've also had the attacks in Otu, in Bamali, in Mabonji, the abductions in Misore, Balue, and so many other unpleasant events that have taken place in the last month. So it's a very painful moment for the people of the Northwest and Southwest regions and for the nation as a whole. They say if your finger pains, every part of your body should feel that there's a pain somewhere. And I think that if something like this is happening in the Northwest and Southwest regions, the country must be worried. They must be looking for solutions. And I think it is some of those solutions and proposals that we are going to make today, that whoever is listening, whoever has the decision-making power, should do something and do it very fast so we can come out of this deadlock.
Okay. Good evening to you, Ricky Samuel, watching us from Kabul out there in Afghanistan. We also want to say good evening to you and welcome D4 Richard, who is going to be participating from the United States of America. He is a member of the civil society. D4, good evening and welcome.
Thanks for having me. I am glad we are having an opportunity to have this discussion today because we are faced with a situation in Cameroon that has been deteriorating over the past few weeks, so to speak. We understand that many of us have thought that the whole thing has calmed down, but we are realizing that it is getting even worse. So I think this will be an opportunity for us to have this conversation, hoping that somehow somebody somewhere is going to listen to us.
Okay, I'll start with you, Franklin Sone Bayen. How do we understand what is happening in the Southwest and Northwest regions at a time where many persons were already concluding that things were going back to normalcy?
What those who concluded that things were going back to normal, they based their conclusions on what? We are in a situation of war, and until we have a resolution, wars do not evaporate. Wars don't evaporate. Weapons don't evaporate. The bitterness that pushed people to the bush doesn't evaporate. The obstinacy that makes those who can solve the problem not take the move, make the move to solve the problem, doesn't make things to evaporate. We are at war, and anyone who was concluding that things are returning to normal, I wonder whether they were in dreamland. I wonder what they based their conclusions on. But here we are, and we can see that it's not over. I don't know who enjoys, I think that's a question we want to answer today. I don't know who enjoys this back and forth we are having and the deterioration. And I'm thinking that this wave looks like a dangerous wave. And those who are taking it for granted, they know why they're taking it for granted. But I think it's not good for the nation.
It's not good for the nation. Well, I'm asking about the timing of what we are observing today. Last year, you and I were in
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
1.5 years ago.
Yes, we were in Yaoundé talking about the major national dialogue, and some resolutions, recommendations were put forth, and we have seen the creation of some commissions and things. Why are they not working?
Do you remember what I said? I emphasized, and I was on on TV in English and in French the week before the major national dialogue. I was on TV in English and in French. The day before the conference opened, I was on TV. At the end of the conference, on my Media Prime, on Canal 2 English, and I think on CRTV. And one thing I said and emphasized was, this is not dialogue. And I said, we are still going to have the dialogue. And I think we must still have a dialogue and negotiations if we're going to solve this problem. I said what was happening in Yaoundé was just a preliminary session for the unitarists and the regionalists who still have not agreed. All of them belong to the system, or most of them. They're still not agreed on whether they wanted to maintain the unitarist system or they wanted to go regionalist. And there will be talks among the federalists what model they want, and even the separatists. I said that in September, October 2019, and I maintain that we haven't had dialogue yet, and we must have it if this problem will be solved.
Okay, we have seen the creation of the Bilingualism Commission. We've seen the persons that are charged with reconstruction. They have moved to the southwest and the northwest. The Bilingualism Commission has done the same. Why are they moving anybody?
Mr. Liu, I said sometimes here that when you begin solving a mathematical problem with the wrong formula, everything that comes after that is wrong. And I said here, in clear terms, this is over a year ago, even when the national dialogue issue was announced, and I said it failed on arrival. And I remember that pro-regime officials were still believing that they will disprove me. Now, in political science, it is a science that you don't gamble. There are particular steps to follow. If we take on to conflict resolutions on the other dimension, with conflict resolutions, you don't gamble. This is not something you go and meet a prophet who will tell you that, no, you shall have it on, and you say amen, and it goes, no. There are procedures, Mr. Liu. And I think I've been saying it over and over, and I said, all the things that emanate from the creation of the national dialogue is zero. Yaoundé, hear me very well. All the things that emanate from the creation of that CPDM family meeting in Yaoundé has no sense of direction in ending the ongoing crisis. That's why I tie with the senior pressman here, Sobe Bayan, who says it was not a dialogue, which is true. Because if we're talking about the things that came out of it, Mr. Liu, now, who were those who sat in that so-called national dialogue? Were they principal actors in the conflict? Only one principal actor was there, the government. And in the conflict, we have two major principal actors before the other sub-actors come into play. That is the government and the restorationists, as we call. Now the question is, how was the national dialogue organized? I said, if you start constructing a story building with a wrong foundation, that story building will not last because it will crumble. This is where we are. And I took time to educate those who have left ENAM, those who have left ERIC. I told them at one point in time on this platform, take a pen and paper. It seems as if they know and are refusing to follow, or they don't know, and when we educate them, through the institutions they sent us to, they still refuse to take. Now look at the national dialogue, Mr. Liu. That you hold a national dialogue, you bring family members and co-family members of the similar ruling party, and they are gallivanting in Yaoundé, spending over 12 billion, which they must pay. I repeat, they must pay. Because that's taxpayers' money that people took and could not give us result. We said earlier, Mr. Liu, if you are holding a dialogue, since as we are talking about a conflict and now a war, the main issue is where you are part, where those involved principal actors in agreement with what you were holding. Did we have the principle of neutrality in terms of venue? It was not there. Now, because of all of this, it explains why some persons who do not even have the real representation of the people were present. Because I tell you, Mr. Liu, all those senators and parliamentarians who are there have lost the real hold and grip of the people they tend to pretend that they represent.
But tell me something about the Bilingualism Commission that was created as
Mr. Liu, the Bilingualism Commission, because it is a fruit of the failed dialogue, it failed on arrival. I repeat, anything that came revolving around that major national dialogue in the way of putting forward these things failed. Now, for Bilingualism Commission, I spoke sometime here on air and I said, if you analyze the Bilingualization Commission, if you look at its modus operandi, they tell you that what they take, they only send the whatever recommendations they have to the presidency. It means that they don't have the power to sanction a ministry or a structure that does not respect aspects of bilingualism. We're talking recently of the issues of hate speech that is still part of what they are supposed to do. And what do we find? That we still get hate speech on the ground and they are mute. They are not mute because they don't want Mr. Leo. It's because they don't have the powers. They don't have what it takes to enact things that must get to action. So if a chief sits in the Southwest and tells you Northwesterners must live on this day, and the Bilingualization Commission cannot take full action like punishing, as the law was supposed to empower them, or to put in place order that will restore all of these kind of setbacks, it means that they don't have any power. I've been saying this over and over. I'm sorry that the budget that Bilingualization is functioning on and other like is waste of budget. Okay. I'll keep repeating that over and over.
Hilaris, your take on the capacity of the international dialogue. Franklin and Fa says that they see that it was built to fail because of the composition and other factors. But is it the fact that the major national dialogue was not well organized, or the fact that the recommendations that came out of it are not being implemented? Oh, to some extent, the fact that competent persons are not available to fully implement what was written?
Well, the dialogue was not well organized, and I think that Anglophones were not the biggest beneficiaries of the major national dialogue. Rather, parties like the Cameroon Renaissance movement, or where FAR comes from, that the ones who benefited most. You want to know that on the 10th of September 2019, the head of state, President Biya, announced that there was actually an Anglophone problem, and that he has ordered the head of government to hold a major national dialogue at the end of that month to discuss the issues to solve the Anglophone problem. But then it turned out to be some form of some national parliament where you had representatives from all over the country who came to drown the Anglophone voice. And one of the recommendations that some people were making at the major national dialogue was that they should bring back Ahijo's corps. And I asked myself, how does bringing back Ahijo's corps stop the war in the Northwest and Southwest regions? Another proposal was the release of political prisoners. And that is how Professor Maurice Kamto and others were released, because of the major national dialogue. And when they were released, it was clear that it is because of the recommendations at the major national dialogue. And regime baron said it was a celebration of President Biya's good faith, and to show that he was going to take the recommendations seriously. So at the end of the day, the major national dialogue did not address the issues that President Biya had said on September 10, 2019, that the dialogue was going to address, because it became some other parliament that lasted for 5 days. The attendees at the major national dialogue were wrongly picked. Somebody said they were representatives of the CPDM. Not really true, because we had wide, broad-based consultations that we saw on TV that were taking place. We saw the former Bishop of Manfi, presently Archbishop of Bamenda. We saw him blessing Eric Tato in America. We understand that the likes of Senator Mbelamuki Charles and others who went to America to talk with members of the armed groups and the separatist movement. We understand that members of government went to South Africa, others went to Belgium and other parts of the diaspora to discuss with members of the separatist movement. And my understanding was that it was supposed to be a framework for everybody to present their preconditions, because we cannot have dialogue without preconditions. Both sides are deadlocked. We have government that thinks that decentralization is the only way, and that the problem or the conflict in the North and Southwest regions will be won through a military solution. And we have separatists who are bent, who feel that only independence is the solution, and that anything that is about any meeting, whether dialogue or negotiation or whatever, should simply be to iron out the terms of the separation. So we have people who are at extreme, but there's need for them to give ground and find common ground. And this cannot be done without us presenting preconditions. And I expected that these separatists in the diaspora had presented probably their preconditions or what they expect to these emissaries that the government had sent abroad. But when they came back, there was no feedback. We did not have maybe a press conference, for example, for them to present their reports that I went to America on taxpayers' money. I met A, B, C, we discussed this and that, and this is what we arrived at. Nobody gave feedback. We only saw that somebody's head was almost broken, I think somewhere, it was in Belgium. And in South Africa, there was some also confusion. And we have not been told. Cameroonians were not told. And I think the problem with the present day government is that it doesn't communicate. It doesn't communicate. You cannot have, for example, that officials are kidnapped in Jian division. And there's no official communication. Nobody is explaining. Nobody is coming out to take responsibility and explain. So the major national dialogue for me was, like Bayern said, a meeting for us to prepare the preliminary framework for a proper dialogue, because we cannot have dialogue without parties. For now, as it stands, there are separatists on the one hand and the government on the other hand. So those who believe that Cameroon should be one and indivisible were the ones who were in Yaoundé, because I'm not sure that the immunity clause that was presented to the separatists abroad, that okay, if we come, we will not arrest you. First of all, the invitations were served them late, and then there were no assurances, because you cannot have dialogue without a third party, without a mediator, to ensure that both there's fairness and that everybody has a fair chance to present their case and be heard. And I had proposed that you cannot want to have dialogue with somebody who sees you as an enemy, and you say that you should be in your house. It doesn't work that way. And if it must be in your house, then you should provide a fair avenue for those people to participate. Because of technology, they could have participated through Zoom, or maybe Google Meet or some other avenue that technology has provided. For government to be in communication with the separatists, whether at home or abroad, there is need for them to be in communication, and they are not in communication. And my fear also is that some separatists, as it has appeared, they are not versed with the issues of managing statecraft.
Excuse me, Eli, please, can you work on the streaming? Many viewers online are complaining that the video quality is not good. Can you guys check it? If it's not if it's not proper, you can stop it and restart to see if we can get a better quality. Yeah.
The separatists on their side do not master the management of the statecraft. Like they think that they have a country. Well, Ambazonia, they are running a country. But then the statecraft, when you manage statecraft, you have to know how to keep secrets. Like if I'm a member of the SDF, for example, and I'm in talks with a member of the CRM on maybe possible coalition, we have to keep it neat and secret until we have ironed out everything possible, and then we come out to the media. But then when we had Afrique reported that there were talks between some government officials and Sisiko and others, before long it had leaked to the media, and then government felt embarrassed, and people said that it was not consistent. So I think that the consultations that led to the major national dialogue and the recommendations that were made were not what President Biya had prescribed on the 10th of September 2019. So it will mean that one way or the other, President Biya's instructions were not followed, and somebody will have to pay for it. Okay.
For Richard, as an outcome of the major national dialogue, some persons were charged with establishing a link follow-up with the diaspora. Do you think that is one of the major weakness, or those charged to do that actually failed woefully, because we've gotten very little from any further discussions between those who took part in the major national dialogue and the diaspora?
Thank you, Leonard. It gets a little interesting when we keep calling what existed in the Yaoundé dialogue, because I don't even know how they came to the conclusion to get that idea that it should be called a dialogue, because to the best of my knowledge, and going by what a lot of the other speakers have raised, I really do not see what happened in Yaoundé as a dialogue. And when you ask why they didn't implement, or why they have failed to implement what they agreed on in Yaoundé, it all boils to the fact that what happened in Yaoundé wasn't really a dialogue. Now listen, let's try to look at what dialogue really is. What is dialogue? What is it that all of us were expecting? given that we have two parties here, we have the separatists on the one hand, or let me not say the separatists, we have the Anglophones, or maybe call them the Southern Cameroonians, or whatever name you may want to give them, on the one hand, and we have the government on the other hand. These are the two protagonists we are talking about here. And in case of any kind of dialogue, we were expecting to find these two protagonists, these two groups, to sit down and have what we call a dialogue. It is true, a dialogue does not only mean two, but the truth is, in this case, what we are talking about involves two parties, two clear parties. Yes, it is true too that on the side of the Anglophones or the Southern Cameroonians, we have different factions and all of that. That is an argument of another day. But we know that there is the Anglophones and we have the government. Coming to the issue of the dialogue. A dialogue is a focused and intentional conversation. It is it creates space for civility and equality in which those who are concerned, they may differ, they have to listen to each other, they speak together, and then they find some kind of a common ground. In dialogue, we seek to set aside fears. We set aside preconceptions. We set aside the need to win. And we take time to hear other voices and other possibilities. Dialogue, it may include some kind of tensions and paradoxes and so on, but in the course of all of that, new ideas emerge. And it is from those new ideas that we formulate a solution. We find a solution to the problem. But when you look clearly at what happened in Yaoundé, this was not what happened. What happened in Yaoundé, we find a situation of a deliberate intention of camouflaging the real problem and then come up to create the situation that there was a national problem and to undermine the particular problem of the Anglophones and now create the impression that it was a national problem. And so therefore, they have to discuss a national issue. It is true, we have a plethora of problems that are facing Cameroon. But that was not the intention for this conversation or for this whatever that
you are not telling me about the appreciation of those who are supposed to engage the diaspora in discussions.
Well, when you talk of engaging the diaspora in discussion, first of all, the diaspora were not even in support of whatever was discussed in the conference. How do you take a resolution in a conference that they did not even appreciate, they did not even support?
Some of them were present in Yaoundé.
Some of the people who were involved in, because listen, Leonard, we know that this whole thing is an Anglophone problem or a Southern Cameroon problem, but we cannot in any way pretend not to know that the people among the Anglophones who hold the shots are the separatists. Okay. And I don't think there was any separatist in that conference in Yaoundé. Now, talking about those who were indicated to go and meet those people and all of that, who were these individuals? The separatists on the side, I was still to come to that. The separatists on their part, they have a major problem, they have a bigger problem even, in which they do not think that they can sit on the table. And there is no way, by just killing people, by kidnapping people, that somehow the government will sign some piece of paper and say, oh, you now have your independence because you have caused us a lot of trouble, so you can have your independence. And there is no way the United Nations organization will just get up and say, oh, because these people have been crying for their independence and because we want to just end this conflict, we will just sign some document and give them their independence. It doesn't work that way. There must be some kind of conversation. There must be people sitting down on the table. And this is what the separatists have completely refused to do.
Okay.
Even if you invite them, they come with a preconceived idea and they tell you that This is the condition. We are only sitting on this table if at the end of our conversation we are having our independence. You don't go to a dialogue with that kind of perception.
And before I'm coming back to you. Yes, Byron, you had something to chip in?
It's to you. We're talking about sending emissaries to talk to the diaspora. I have heard this a lot, and we seem to have the impression that there is a tribe called diaspora, or some faction that is called the diaspora. The diaspora are just like you and me who are living abroad. They are just like you and me who have been abroad and are still there, unlike who have come back like I and Atia. You know, so the diaspora are not. People think that because Iavela diaspora, it means that the representatives of the separatists were there. It's not the same thing. There has been some confusion between separatist leaders and diaspora. They are diasporans who don't want to hear anything about this problem. And meanwhile, and so I asked the question: do you think that those who are abroad are angrier, feel the pinch of the problem that we face, the reason people are in the bush, more than those who are here? We feel it more than them, and I think we should kill this whole thing about going to see the diaspora. They are not a faction in this thing. They're just Cameroonians who happen to be living abroad at this time. And coming back to talk about why we have the deadlock. You see, I've heard the government say that, okay, we want to talk, but who are we going to talk to among the separatist leaders? I think the separatists are also saying, who are we going to talk to within the government? Because from the fallouts of the major national dialogue and what we're seeing on the ground, even what we are seeing on the ground, we take, for example, the so-called special status or the so-called decentralization. You can see that only within the government, and as I said, I thought that the major national dialogue was about thrashing the differences between the unitarists, which are the hawks within the government, and the regionalists. From evidence, their differences were not thrashed. So there is deadlock within the government. Because you see a part of the government want to go decentralization, another part of it is holding it back. You saw enthusiasts like Chief Dr. Atemebako, who thought that the special status and decentralization were the panacea. You saw how wild they went. You heard Senator Mbela Moki Charles, how wild they went. Now, if people like that are disavowing the fallouts of the major national dialogue, who do you think is left to talk to? Within the government, they did not succeed to thrash their differences. There is deadlock within the government, so even the government is not ready to talk. And as long as they cannot talk, there's going to be a problem persistently. There's going to be a problem. But now, we've heard several ministers and government officials say that the dialogue is a process. Dialogue is a process that is supposed to be ongoing, that has been engaged already. As well as war is a process too. Yes. For as long as they're dragging their feet over dialogue, so long they're also dragging the war. It's also dragging. And mind you something. They say in French, I'm going to say in French because it sounds better, l'appétit vient en mangeant. In 2017, when this war started, if you took the right measures to stop the war, it would have been easier to stop. Now the wound is festering. The boys are enjoying the war. When they put out the videos where they've messed up the people who normally mess up other people, they're enjoying the show, and they're getting more sophisticated weapons. When you hear in the videos, the gunshots don't sound like they sounded in 2017, 2018. They're now automatic weapons. Either they were bought and sent to them, or they were seized from the soldiers. It's getting beautiful for them. I think it's getting dangerous. I say again, this wave looks like a dangerous wave. Okay. Dialogue is a process. Would you have expected, since it's a process, to see other activities accompany the major national dialogue, given the fact that it's a process? And the activities geared towards finding a lasting solution. Just to answer Mr. Leo, anything accompanying something that has failed has already failed. Okay. I don't want to mix words here. The national dialogue is not an event to me. It was just a party where people had to get some money, send people abroad,
Some took 13 million, others took 5 million, 10 million, depending on the distance and where you are going to, enjoy themselves in hotels and came back. And corroborating with what Atia just said, none of them came back with a proper report. That this is actually what happened in my state in South Africa, or in Birmingham, or in Berlin, you know. So at the end of it, we start asking ourselves, was it that there was a chunk of money somewhere that the regime was just looking for where to keep it, and then had to call some persons? Yeah.
Reports. They addressed the report to somebody.
Yeah.
So I think we should be asking who the report was submitted to. What have they done with the report?
Right.
I imagine that the following procedure, they have submitted reports of some kind. Whether it was a proper report, whether whatever, they have done some reporting, oral or written, in form or out of form. Some reporting has been done, but has somebody taken action over that? I think that's
most
where we
appropriate
are.
even. And if you look at it, just like coming to in relation to what you're asking, in the course of when Atia was talking, he made mention of the national dialogue and that even CRM has benefited, and sometimes we might misinform the public, but sometimes we have to put the things right, CRM has not benefited from the national dialogue. I repeat, CRM has not benefited. Now, when you look at it, before the national dialogue, we made some documents are submitted to the PM, and we made it clear that if these things could be addressed, amongst them, we were giving proposals on how we could get a better national dialogue. And when this document was handed over to the PM, we said it is only when the PM will look into these things that we can now decide if we'll be part and parcel of the dialogue. And we realized that when we gave that document, it was placed in the cupboard somewhere, and nothing happened to it, and that's why we're not part of the dialogue. Now, on the other hand, talking about the release, I think Atia is more of a media man. When you go on air, you should take things to the way the media presents. We know that Professor Maurice Kamto's release was not caused by national dialogue; it was caused by Emmanuel Macron. Whoever intercepted him there, and he said clearly there, and it was being videotaped, that he has ordered, he has instructed the Yaoundé regime to release. So, Professor Maurice Kamto's release is not any way connected to the national dialogue. It was connected to an instruction President Emmanuel Macron gave Yaoundé. And that's why I've been saying that if a state could say they are sovereign, they are independent, and somebody else gives you instruction to release another person, it means you are not independent.
Anyways, I do not think that Atia was accusing the MRC. All I think, my appreciation of what he said was that those who, he's not accusing MRC, but he's saying that the people who had a problem did not get as much as those who did not have a problem. I mean, who had a problem not directly linked. I was in the hall. I was in the hall, and the Prime Minister announced it triumphantly as a victory. And that was when, I think, just before the final resolution was read. Don't tell me he thought it wasn't linked somehow to it. The government wanted something to show as an outcome of the major national. You don't have to.
Anyway, it's your point all the same.
The government wanted something to show as a major outcome of the major national dialogue, and that's what they threw on the floor, and people applauded.
What I'm saying clearly is that before even Emmanuel Macron was making a statement, when somebody makes a statement even today in diplomatic city, it doesn't mean that the statement started that day. That's a sure fact. Okay. Yeah. If you look at the statement interpreted, my worry here, my interjection rather, is clear that Yaoundé, the national dialogue, is not what caused the release of Professor Maurice Kamto. Whether it was announced there or not, it was caused by an external factor, and the external person who did it announced it on air. And the day he announced it does not mean that he announced it on that day and it occurred. It means that in diplomacy, it might have taken some steps, some months or some weeks, that please see what you can do to release that person.
Okay. No, let him
when that person confronted President Macron and said they should release Professor Maurice Kamto, he did not talk only about Professor Maurice Kamto. He said that they were killing Cameroonians. That Cameroonians were being killed, and President Macron said he wanted to see what to do. Cameroonians are still being killed. People are being killed, and we have had the bloodiest week. Last week was the bloodiest.
I get you.
So if President Macron could instruct 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, that they should release Professor Maurice Kamto, he should have also instructed that they should stop killing Cameroonians on both sides.
Anyway, while I'm just landing, while I'm just landing, my concern here is about the aspect of release, not what other statements that surround.
No, I'm saying that the CRM benefited from the major national dialogue.
To move on to that, now we realize that all what we are trying to analyze here, you see that, as I said earlier, we are watching a kangaroo system operate from all its fares. Now, in a failed regime, these are indicators. Because when you say you spend close to 12 billion and we are not getting the feedback on the ground in terms of positivity, it means something actually is wrong. Meaning that the cosmetic measure that we put in place has not yielded any fruit. Just like we were making mention of bilingualism commission and also that of reconstruction. All those things are they are all the fruits of what they call the national dialogue. And so I said earlier, what Yaoundé has done is that they are taking they are currently taking the second step before the first. And in real war issues, we talk about reconstruction. You cannot be talking about reconstruction when war is going on. We've seen the issues in Liberia. We've seen the issue in Sierra Leone. We see the issue in Rwanda. Rwanda is getting up to just the town of Kigali. It's not because they started reconstructing while they were fighting. It means that the war ended. Okay. Measures were put in place, and then they came up now. So those are the things I think that it would be good that we look at it. But then the kangaroo system is still winding time, while they are giving room for people who were not even used to AK-47 automatic rifles to become experts in it. Okay. It is dangerous. Okay, dangerous.
It is dangerous.
Just to add that the Bilingualism Commission is not it did not come from the Major National Dialogue. President Biya created the commission in January 2017, 2 years before the Major National Dialogue. So we cannot, on this platform, say that it is after the Major National Dialogue that the commission went to work.
Well, so, in any case, it was all part of the dialogue. They said dialogue had already started. So it wasn't out of the Major National Dialogue, but they said it was out of
it. That this is the fruit of it, and they're quoting even till today.
That's to confirm that dialogue is a process, not an event.
It could be a process, but Bayan has said something clear. If you call it a process and you put cosmetic measures because you think it's a process, as the cosmetic measures are dragging on, that's how the things too are getting worse, because those who think you could order them to lay down their arms are also getting experience overnight. And today, I could not imagine from the videos that people could hold automatic rifles, they could hold chain cutters and all the like. I now see it here. It means that, as you say, it's a process. Continue with the process. As you are going with the process too, the separatists are telling you that we too are in the process learning to be more equipped than you. So at the end of it, the civilians are the ones who are forced to pay the price. Okay, so we must go to
I want you to appreciate the contribution of the civil society. Do you think they have worked enough to wanting to see an end to the war? Are they involved? Are they pressuring both sides with enough force that would force them to see need to end the war?
When you say civil society, I wonder if Cameroon even has one anymore. We no longer have a civil society in the country.
For Richard is a member of the civil society.
They are either this way or the other way. Yeah. They have been involved in huge business of collecting contracts, of winning grants, of some of them who even existed to do some other thing have gone to restructure their constitutions and their objectives and goals. To input humanitarian work, to input issues of rape, issues of gender-based violence. So it is a whole big industry business that people are making a lot of money from. And because we've not seen the civil society hold government to account. Nobody, even the people who are shouting in the diaspora, have been unable to hold government to account on the legitimate issues. The government, the Major National Dialogue recommended that government should revise the nationality code of the country. We are 1.5 years down the line, nothing is being done to revise the nationality code. Government said there were going to be some parliamentary and governmental representation of Cameroonians living in the diaspora. That has not been done. Government said that there was going to be the creation of, I think, a ministry in charge of the diaspora or some agency and of that sort. It has not been done. Government said there will be the creation of a mediation platform to discuss with radicalized Cameroonians in the diaspora. Nothing has been done. Government said there was going to be creation of a transnational investment fund for the diaspora. Nothing has been done. So many other things that the Major National Dialogue recommended that the state to do, the state has not done, and the civil society is not raising a voice. We have just a few people who have been keeping the resistance alive, the likes of Kawala and others, who through the Black Friday and other protest events, writing petitions to the IMF, to the UN Security Council and other structures. But apart from this 20 or or slightly above civil society organizations that we can say, okay, they have been trying to keep the momentum alive, to try to call government and the other side, the separatists and the non-state armed groups to the table. There's just no other person. Every other person is coming to benefit. They are either struggling to see how they can get contacts from the government bench, or see how they can be appealing to international organizations to be given contracts. Because when on June 3, I think, Kawala and other women wrote to the IMF and to the UN Security Council, we saw some other letters from other women who passed for civil society organizations in the country, who said that they were against what had been written. And what these people wrote was that there was need for the Anglophone crisis to become a topical issue. It should be a topical issue internationally, that people in the West should stop pretending and lying to Cameroonians. Because you were saying there that France was the one giving instructions for things for Professor Maurice Kamto to be released. Why has France not given instructions for people who are being killed, for the killings to stop? Are you saying that France enjoys the killings? Of course not. But then France cannot be committed to resolving the crisis, and the next day they are shipping military weapons and other aid and other supplies to the country. America cannot be pretending that they are interested to see an urgent end to the crisis. But at the same time, we have key stakeholders who are either in Cameroon or in the diaspora, who are under the American watch, and America is doing nothing to see that these people can be brought to reason and to get consensus from both ends. I'm sure that if it became difficult for maybe a member of government whose family is residing abroad to go and visit their family, or that because some of them are married to foreigners, or that their wives, in-laws, or somebody dies and they cannot go for the funeral because they have been denied visas, I'm sure it will mean something to them. But then these things are not being done. They do blanket statements that visa restrictions. When you go to the embassy, how do you know that somebody was denied a visa? When people are going to apply for visas, they don't announce. They don't go to CRTV, or they don't come to my Media Prime to say, hey, I'm going to the US Embassy to apply for a visa, and this is how it's going to work. So I think that Cameroonians are not doing enough. Just like the parliament has failed to hold power to account, it is the same for the civil society that appears to, for the most part, be partisan. Because at one point, the civil society is seen like an opposition. Somebody like Far Elvis is a journalist, but then you cannot take away the CRM cap from him. Because at one time he speaks like a journalist, the other time he's speaking like a member of a political party. So there is need for Cameroonians to pick one cap and wear it. So we are sure that this man is of the civil society. You cannot claim today to be of the civil society, the next day we see you in a big CPDM Gandora, you are dancing and praising President Biya and asking for him to take another mandate. So how then do you come about to hold the same government to account? So it gets difficult. So in Cameroon for now, what I've seen in the Anglophone crisis is that we have just business structures that pass for civil society organizations.
Richard, you are a member of the civil society. What has been the core difficulty for you guys to hold both sides to account, to force their hands to sit and talk together?
Yeah, Leonard, first of all, I would want to state here that the civil society is a broad concept, a broad concept that involves a number of different organizations. And what you understand is that in Cameroon, we have different organizations with different objectives, with different goals, which all fall under what we call the civil society organization. It is not all these organizations that has something related to conflict management and stuff like that. All the same, we have seen in other cases how civil society organizations have come together to put some kind of pressure on the regime or the government in place to ensure that there is some kind of a resolution of conflict. Now, what happens in Cameroon is that we have a situation where everything in Cameroon has been politicized. Everything is politicized to the extent that whatever the civil society organizations even plan, the government quickly comes in to interject. And as a matter of fact, the government sees the actions of the civil society as being opposing to the government's actions. We recently heard that a number of women belonging to the civil society organizations, they came together to call on the United Nations organization to bring the issue on the Security Council of the UNO. But what we realize is that the government quickly comes in. We find this other group of women who are mostly political elite, who now come up with their own communique, counteracting what those women are talking about, and try to paint them as being unpatriotic, so to speak. So you see, these are the kind of challenges that you find, and you find that civil society bodies, they become very careful not to step on toes, not to get to situations where they might be targeted. There was the last time we had there was a conversation about this in the UN Security Council. We find this woman who was a member of the civil society organization, and everybody was everybody had the hope or expecting that she was going to really expose everything that was happening, but she was some kind of being very cautious in the way she presented the issues, and it didn't really present the issue as seriously as the issue is on the ground, and that is because she was looking behind her back and looking over her shoulders and being very careful that let me not say anything here that will lead me into trouble tomorrow, because as you know, even the government's reaction to that was that these civil society organizations are people who are looking for money. They are doing whatever they are doing to look for funds for their organization and all of that. So, as a matter of fact, I wouldn't say that the civil society organization has done anything really concrete in addressing this situation. But I will think that if there is a possibility of these civil society organizations to come together, because we look at what happened in Liberia, where women fearlessly came out and faced one of the greatest dictators in Africa, one of the highest dictators, Charles Taylor, and they marched straight to the presidency and told the president that they were not leaving the presidency until the situation is resolved. So we need that kind of courage, because that is what is lacking among the members of the civil society. Most civil society organizations try as much as possible to stay away from politics. They try as much as possible to be very cautious not to mention, and even those that seem to have something directly related to the issue of conflict, like organizations with civil rights that deals with human rights issues. They are not very vocal, they are not very forthcoming when it comes to the issue of this crisis, and I don't think they're putting a lot of pressure. But like I said, this is because of the constraints that have been put around them by the government and the threat that is coming from the separatists.
Okay, Sonny Bayen, now let's look at
You want me to say a word first of all on, on the civil society thing? We have to understand that what we call civil society, some of them are corporate bodies that perhaps have some corporate social responsibility branches which they highlight, but a lot of them are just corporate bodies. Those who are in civil society, some are there because it's a cause that they believe in, some it's because of their professional background, and some are just working for some organization. So you see someone who, like Atia said, maybe I should leave the political, who used to work for organization that promotes, let's just use a wild hypothetical situation, smoking for whatever reason, and loses that job and then gets a next job with an organization that is campaigning against smoking. They would be there, you know them wearing those t-shirts that carry those messages. They're just working for the organization. I think what we see in the way our civil society organizations function in Cameroon today tells of that background, that some are just there because they work there, some are there because they see it's lucrative, and those who are there because they believe in the cause, you can tell. He named somebody. I'm surprised he didn't name someone else. I'm really surprised he did not. But I think, to be fair, he too is doing something. He is there both. You can tell that he believes in it. to what measure is another debate. He believes in it, and he also has the expertise, the requisite expertise to do it. I'm not going to call names, but the attitude of civil society in this country, when you look at it, you can tell who is there because they believe in the cause, and you can tell who is there because they're working for some organization, or they're doing corporate business in the name of civil society.
Yeah, but where do we situate our elites of the southwest and northwest regions? The war has been ongoing for some time, and maybe things have not gone as planned. Many expected that by now we should be moving freely in the southwest and northwest regions, having resolved the problem. And if things have not gone the way they were planned by government, isn't it also the role of those called the elites of these regions to also call the powers that be that errors or miscalculations were made at some point, and that there is need for everybody to have a rethink and go back to take the path that would definitely solve this problem? Bayan, you speak, and then he comes in.
Yeah, you see, just like with civil society, defining what is civil society, we ought to begin with defining who is an elite.
Yeah.
I remember in 1994 or so, Minister Salai, I hope I'm right, was having, let me leave in Salai, Northwest ministers were having a meeting. They were creating something called Noela, the Northwest Elite Association. You know, of course, there was Swela from the early 90s, and the Northwest political elite now wanted to create something in that light. And when they had that meeting, they excluded certain personalities from coming into the hall. And I remember Barrister Senze said, if I'm not an elite of the Northwest, what am I? Or who is an elite then? You know, the notion of elite in our political system is government officials, you know. So that would mean that in Guti subdivision, where I come from, I'm not an elite, but I think I am.
You are an elite.
I am by my level of education, by my activity, by the things I do, by the influence I carry. But let me tell you something. During the major national dialogue, somebody, a well-placed person, came to me and said, "Bayan, why didn't you come for the consultation?" I said, "What has bicycle got to do with the petrol station?" He said, "But your name was on the list from Guti subdivision. I wasn't informed. He did not inform me." So you know who are elite. They have their club, they exclude who they think has a contrary view, and they think they have a solution in their monolithism. That is where the problem is, that the political elite are government CPDM elite, and you know where they stand. Either they feel the pinch but can't say it, or they don't want it discussed. Because I remember we had one of the programs we had with Professor Elvis Ngole on CRTV, and there was this issue about who will represent the Anglophones, and he said it's the elected parliamentarians, the councillors, the mayors, and the like, and that these other people, I think he even threw his hand like this, that these other people who are agitating don't have any legal representative, they are not legal representatives. But then we try to establish a difference between the legality and the legitimacy. There are people who carry sway, whose voice can bring a solution, but they are kept out because the political elite feel threatened. They feel that if they open the space, they could be shoved aside, because of course they know the potentials of each and every one, and they know what people carry, you know, and so they prefer to live in a cocoon and let it rot and spoil than open the space for fresh air, for fresh ideas, for people who have the real following to come in and say this is the way to go, and so we can go there. Know one thing: every conflict comes to an end on the table, and when that conflict has been ended, even those who were against the system, once they have agreed, they have agreed. And that's why we said, for example, in the case of DDR, that DDR is a post-conflict thing. And when the leaders, the commanders, have agreed on the table, if you have anybody with arms going against them, that's considered a recalcitrant fellow, and they know how to handle them. If we open the space, the real elite who have the influence on the people would come to the table, would come to where these decisions are taken and bring good ideas. And once there's agreement, once there's consensus over this, there will be a solution. We can't have it. The elite can't play that role because a certain group of people have seized the notion of elitism and have kept out some people.
Is that where the problem is? Is that should things work out, we are going to see the emergence of a new cream of elites in these two regions? Is that where that deadlock is found?
Yes, it's also found there amongst other issues.
Yeah, because how do we explain that elites, those who call themselves elites, cannot freely move around their regions, subdivisions and divisions, and yet will not press for this to end?
Yes, you know, Sonny was given a very good definition of who an elite is. I think
but you are an elite now.
I am an elite. I am an elite, a senior one for that matter, in Gonoko village, and I don't play with that.
So you are forced to fail there?
No, not self-failing. If I tell you, I said what Sonny was describing is the exact situation on the ground. I simply took upon it myself and made them to understand that elites would not be those who have those big cars from Yaoundé. Elites will be those who have influence in their village, and that's how I got into the scene against their wish. So I think that if you look at it critically, what he said is just within context. I mean, in terms of reality on the ground, because I realized that even before I forced myself into the scene of being an elite in my village, it was not an easy issue, because you know you have to. Some people say this small picking, so even if you will on time come and all the like, but you know it's a matter of taking the bull by the horn. But then the question we find out now is, if these people call themselves elite, now why can they not work freely? Why can they not see into it that the issue comes to an end? It boils back to the fact that, like what you're asking there, who does not want the war to end? These elites, these categories of elites that Sonny just mentioned, don't want it to end. One, because as it ends, a new political class, a new elitist class will step up, and that will suddenly outsmart their existence. Because, as I said, sometimes their ideas have expired. Now, because they are living in a particular cocoon, their ideas have expired, and the new generation will want to come in with a new impetus which will make them become obsolete. That's the reality on the ground. Now, if you look at it, we talk about the elites here, and that's why I said at the time before Chief Dr. John Gute was in place as the PM, we know former PM Young have also been going around with elites in the northwest and the southwest, probably taking information about what the grievances of the people are all about and all the like. But you see, it did not yield any fruit. Now, when the Chief John Gute came in and did the same round, moving to the northwest and the southwest region, we still realize that all the dialogues with the various stakeholders has not yielded fruit. Why is it so? Because the wrong elites are at the forefront. Because they lived in a situation whereby the people have lost confidence in them. And so anything that comes from them, even the grassroots does not want to take it as a gospel truth. And what does it mean? I proposed to Yaoundé regime sometime that they need to build another elitist class to be at the forefront, which means that instead of the usual parliamentarian that people know, or the usual director general in Yaoundé, or the usual secretary of state, this time it should be now grassroots persons who have what it takes to influence the population. Now, that is what I've been saying here, that if we take this approach, you realize here that sometimes the people could begin giving a listening ear, because they now know, because there's a notion moving on as far as the grassroots is concerned, that there's nothing good that can come from these particular elites that they have been used to. Now, look at it. We're talking about elites here. Now, to tell you that those that are, as of now, they are not relevant as far as the current crisis is concerned, it's for the simple reason that many of them have even transferred completely to the nation's capital, Yaoundé, as I speak. And I know a handful of them who have just decided to buy their houses to stay permanent either in Yaoundé or Douala. And they will tell you that they only come to those areas once in a while under military escorts, and then they do some kind of light show with some few francs that they put around, and then they get back to their hideouts. So at the end of it, we think that instead of them living this kind of lifestyle, we should be looking at, if we have the right measures in place for the crisis to come to an end, then that's when we begin to judge if these elites are elites in real terms or not. But the moment we don't arrive at that, it becomes a problem. And remember, it's not just the elites; it is also it's a whole caucus. We're talking about government, we talk about armed bandits, we talk about even the non-state armed actors, we talk about the security forces, and the worst of it now is that media has gotten into that quagmire. media itself has now become another role and become another major actor in not wanting the world to come to an end. I am telling you because we know you are a media person, Bayan is a media person, even Aceh is a media person, that we have media person now who now have a sure means of making money through propaganda. And so at the end of it, the odontology profession has finally been dragged to the mud as we find it. If you take the case of Mundemba, it will tell you that if these persons actually, as per se, and as per their same headline put in place as on this Monday, if you want to examine it, you obviously realize that something must have transpired. We don't know what has transpired, but something must have transpired, because you will not tell me that it is a coincidence that you say non-indigens are responsible for the kidnap and the killing of the DD of the division delegate Minepart in Jan, or you say that non-Jan youths, and another one says it is the time for the people of Jan to rise against intruders or invaders or whatever. So if you look at their captions, it tells you that they have now decided, since as the crisis is making us difficult to have money, the only way we can have money is the hard way, the only way. Therefore, if somebody calls us and can give us the money, we will draw the agenda for him and put it ahead. But now, as I said, with all of this, these are the category of person who don't want the crisis to come to an end. But I keep saying that we must be able to have people who should be put under checks and balance. That's why I keep on saying that the National Communication Council is now on litmus test. And that's why the president of it, George Kebokan Kalabobse, has now the litmus test. I tell him that if you tell us that you are fighting hate speech and you want journalists to respect the ontology of the profession and all the like, this is the time we think that these papers should now be called up and asked, but at this, they should be quoted, and at the same time, the process concerned, the powers that be, should also be able to come in. Because if they come in, Mr. Leo, as I'm rounding up, what does it mean? It simply means that they can now call these journalists, thank you for doing us a good job, by knowing that those who were involved in the abduction and the kidnappings are non-indigens. Now, we now employ you now to assist the military to give us the identities of these non-indigens so we can track them down. If they're not able to give us, it means that they are accomplices to hate speech and genocide in preparation. Simple.
Bayan and Fa raising the issue for a redefinition of who an elite is for the people of the Southwest and Northwest regions. Generally considered an elite is someone who has big director position or an MP. For the people now, do you think that if the government needs to go further to wanting to solve this problem, there is a need to use other persons within the respective communities who necessarily are not government officials or MPs, like Fa Elvis Tayon? I'm sure he has a strong following and the people of his village would readily listen to him, like Sone Bayan here. Is it time for us to rethink those to be used in engaging certain projects or actions geared towards ending this crisis henceforth?
Yeah, I would have loved, if I was the moderator of the program, I would have loved to ask Bayan if he can influence anything in Manyemen where he comes from, or if Elvis can influence the affairs in Guneko village. And it will be a big no, because if they could, then there will be peace in their villages, because I'm sure they are longing for peace. They would have controlled their affairs and put it under control.
Let me just 1 second. Let me put it this way. Within our development and cultural and development associations, the KUDAS, as you know, there's often the call for us to do something to stop what's happening in our areas. And the position I often hold is, this is not your war. You didn't create this war. If we stop the war, and I'm not talking about Manyemen, my influence doesn't remain in Manyemen. I'm talking about Nguti subdivision. I'm talking about Kupe Manengu by the southwest region, the Anglophone community. If you stop the war in Gunoko, the war is not over. What we need is for those who take decision makers, to listen to those who live the realities. I was frequently in the villages. I was teaching in that area and spending every weekend. I was in the village for the traditional. I'm a traditional counselor in Manyemen. I was in the village every weekend, and that made me spend more than 1 day each week in the village. There were times when I stayed on there before going to teach. I know how this war started. I know how the people were radicalized. Now, someone in Yaoundé is an advisor. What's he advising somebody about? What are you telling somebody that he doesn't know? You are in Yaoundé like him, I am from the community. I can advise you better than someone who lives with you in Yaoundé and doesn't understand what's happening on the ground.
Yes, I'm happy they have answered. To tell you that they are not an elite. They are not in the elite class. I'm sorry to say, but then the elite class must always be small. It must always be small, because it will not be an elite if it were to be everybody. Then it will no longer be the elite.
Because let me say that when I said I'm elite of my area, I didn't mean everybody. I'm saying that if you're taking any number, listen, I am a traditional counselor. I have sound education.
Leo,
I am a journalist.
We are making an error. There are two kinds of elite.
I am a journalist.
The political elite and the cultural elite.
No. I am elite in general. I cut across in civil society because the press is, I think, is civil society. I am an elite because I am an elite journalist and I'm an elite citizen of this country. And if I'm an elite citizen of this country, just take it back to my community. In this country, I am an elite. When I practice journalism, I see how it's appreciated. I am an elite journalist in Cameroon. I don't limit myself. When I say I come from somewhere, I just take it back there. I am a cultural elite. I'm a member of the traditional council. I am a journalist, well-trained. I'm educated. You understand? And I am involved. I have a voice in the socio-political sphere that carries weight. I am an elite, sir. If you count 5, I'm an elite. If you count 2, I'm an elite.
Okay.
Well, you're an elite, we accept. But I want to say that there are indicators, like the indicators for being a state. To be a state, you must have a fixed territory, a population, a government, sovereignty, and all that. So to be an elite,
don't philosophize
you must have some disproportionate amount of wealth. You must have some privileges. You must have the ability to influence the people.
You think influence is from wealth?
You must have political power.
And all of the billions.
You must have political power.
And just listen to that. You're talking about wealth, and all of the billions that have been pumped out to the communities have not changed their minds. You think it's about material wealth?
Brian, I'm talking about who an elite is. I'm not talking about whether
an elite is somebody who is wealthy.
No,
you are using the archaic definition of an elite.
No, there are so many things.
So it's the archaic definition you are giving.
You should have one of them. You should either have disproportionate amount of wealth. You should either have some political power that you can wield. You should
you have the capacity to deconstruct that political power.
You must have some privilege, because if somebody is born into a family that is privileged family, they become automatically part of the elite class.
And they solve problems?
No, you are the ones asking elites to solve problems. But what I'm telling you is that the elite that you consider to be elite, whether director generals, ministers, and all of that, are even more helpless than you and I, because they cannot go to their homes freely. You can go to Guneku, but some of them cannot go. If a minister came from Guneku, I'm not sure they can go to Guneku. So it tells you that you are even freer than they are, and you may even be more comfortable than some of those ministers are. So I'm telling you that the elite that we are expecting to help solve this problem are more helpless than. They are very helpless. They cannot help us, because what will a minister of land, for example, who is an Anglophone, do to solve the Anglophone crisis? What can they really do in effect to solve the Anglophone crisis? By resigning or what? And when they resign, what changes? So what I'm saying is that we have lawmakers that we should put pressure on them, because the problems now are fundamental issues that stem from the fundamental document of the land, the constitution, the way the country is managed, the way it is framed. Who can be president? What are the privileges that somebody who is president can have? What are the privileges that an Anglophone has under the constitution? Why do we need another law when the constitution already says that Cameroon shall be a bilingual country, multicultural, one and indivisible, unitary, and all of those things? Why did we have to create a commission? Why do we have to create other structures? And do you think that somebody who became an elite because they were appointed into the Bilingualism Commission, that is a result of the crisis, you think they want to fall out, they want the structure to no longer exist? Or that somebody became elite because they are in the GG, they became appointed to the GGR centers to manage the GGR process? You want them to say, hey, please, this thing should end, and I no longer want to be in the elite class.
That's why we.
So what I'm telling you is that people are making benefits. People have acceded to offices they would never have dreamt of. There are people today who are public independent conciliators. What office is that? Who would have dreamt 10 years ago that there would be such an office? But people are benefiting. They are going to they will recruit people. They will manage budgets. They will have bodyguards. They will drive in big cars that they will never have imagined. So I'm telling you that the people you are calling elite are the same people who, one way or the other, are benefiting. And there's another elite class that has been formed already. We have generals in villages, people who call themselves field marshals. Well, these are people who in the military, in the next 100 years, they will not even be...
No, they will not call themselves elites.
I'm saying that they are in the elite class. They are in the elite class.
Yeah, from their perspective, they are the ones calling the shots.
They call the shots where they are.
And actually, you are wrong to say
they manage well.
I'm
saying that if they were in the regular military, there are some of these people
proper DDR
who will never become colonels.
In a proper DDR process, some of them will be integrated if this is finally resolved the way we hope it would.
But yeah, when they're integrated, they will not become field marshals.
No, forget about
because in Cameroon we don't have that kind of structure. So I'm saying that
forget about field marshal. We had
in the regular Cameroon force, some of these people, if they were in the Cameroon force, they will never become field marshals.
No, forget
so the next 100 years,
any field marshal in Cameroon. So
but we have today.
Field marshal.
I mean, on the other side, there are elites that have cropped up who are managing well today. They have privilege
in their context,
and they have privileges.
Yes, it suits in their context.
So at the end of the day, those who don't want the crisis to end are these kinds of people. People who do not believe that they were going to be somewhere, but because of the crisis, they are there, and they think that if the crisis ends, they will no longer enjoy those privileges. All some of the ministers, the field marshals, these people who are calling themselves, I'm secretary this, I'm secretary that, commander this, and all. These are people who are benefiting from the crisis. And you cannot today tell them that, hey, the crisis has ended. I'm sure they'll collapse and die. Because what will become of them?
That's the more reason why in a normal state that is not kangaroo, they will put in place measures that will wipe out those who are taking positions that are not supposed to take and get everybody on board. But unfortunately, they are not willing to do that. So if you have reconciliation, as you're mentioning, and the other positions, even the field marshals, why are they existing? Because a system known as a kangaroo system has categorically refused to do what it's supposed to do in order for these scenarios you are mentioning to take place.
I'm sorry to take it personal, but I want to tell you that you as a party leader representative, you are the ones benefiting from the kangaroo system. Yes. A structure that authorizes 330 political parties. You are benefiting from it. Because the CRM was created because of the laissez-faire.
When I look at you say benefiting, when
I'm saying that the kangaroo system is what you people are benefited from.
But because you cannot have a political party, it is kangaroo.
If they were to ask the CRM today that this kangaroo system has ended, what way forward? There's no proposal, there's no project.
No, sorry, that's an
no, I'm sorry. There's no political parties to work on project.
You see why I said that you come with CPD?
Have you saw the project?
How do we go over to presidential election without having an agenda?
Please.
Is any party that goes to presidential election without an agenda?
I'm sure there was an agenda.
Say you don't know, you're living in ignorance. Ask me.
You don't communicate.
I am in.
What's the project?
You don't know because you have a mindset.
What is the project?
You see a life? I can tell you from sports to everything, construction, health, everything.
So how do you want to solve the crisis?
Do you want me to give you here?
Please. No. Want to solve the crisis. As CRM, how do we solve this Anglophone crisis?
I we don't have an agenda.
Don't say the system is funny.
I wonder why Atia is stigmatizing.
You don't come on the platform and you say the party has no plan of action.
The MRC.
I don't know why. You come ideas to come and infiltrate the platform.
I don't know why
Atia is to perform the kind of duty, performing in an honorable manner. That's how your friends, newspaper journalists, took because they paid money and they did the other way around. You are a CPD member from your language. Why are you talking about CRM?
No, I'm telling you that the kangaroo system yourself. The kangaroo system you talk about is what allows people like you to exist. Political parties are not participating in elections.
From their local elections, we shall know them.
They should be dissolved. In my opinion, parties
they come and do on here. To go after CRM, when people are dying, that's the main thing you should target.
How can CRM solve the crisis?
Please.
How can CRM solve the crisis?
Please.
I will be marching. No to the word. Sorry, no. We have agenda. You have not asked.
To march on the streets.
Have you asked?
Ndifo Richard, please. We are looking at who does not want an end to the war in the southwest and northwest regions. Please, the international community, do you think they are committed, like the U.S. Secretary of State said recently, that the international community is committed to pushing for an end to this? We are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years into the war.
Yeah, Leonard, before I answer your question, permit me come back to this issue of elite. You see, when Atia spoke, it gave me the impression like I am not an elite, or so to speak. You see, we know that the common English language definition of an elite says an elite is a group of people who distinguish themselves in terms of their intelligence, their social standing and wealth in their community. But even though I still challenge that kind of definition, because what about somebody who does virtually nothing to influence his community, but who has the wealth, or who is a PhD holder and does virtually nothing to influence his community? I do not think that that kind of an individual could be considered an elite. But then, looking at the elite in the terms of in the spirit of Cameroon, and I want to believe that it is from that perspective that Atia is reading his definition of elite, is the fact that we see an elite as this group of people, like Bayen said, it is this group of people who have abrogated to themselves the title of elite by virtue of the fact that they have enjoyed the benefit of being appointed to some positions of government. And so you see, they craft themselves into a small clique, and then they call that elite, and then they give themselves that title of elite. Those are people who they themselves have claimed the title of elite. Nobody gave them that title. And many of them, even though they belong to that class, in my opinion, are not even elite. And to say that many of these guys are even the reason why this conflict is still where it is. It's not moving forward. I will just quickly take the example of the National Assembly, members of Parliament, before I get back to your question. You see, I have been wondering, when I look at the situations that in the Western world, for example, you find a situation where you have Democrat and Republican. Now, when there is something that touches on the life of black people, no, the Democrats and the Republicans come together. They form some kind of a caucus to address the issue that concerns them. In our National Assembly, we have Anglophones. I still don't understand why the English-speaking Cameroonians in Parliament, irrespective of whether they are SDF or CPDF, why can't they come together and maybe create some kind of a caucus? It may not be official per se, because I'm sure if they want to make it official, the government is not going to allow that kind of a group. It might be informal, but they could always meet outside, because when you meet outside of the National Assembly, outside of the deliberation of the National Assembly, they can have conversations among themselves. They can actually find a solution. We talk of people like Belamuki who speak very powerfully against some of the things that are happening. But at the end of the day, when you find him on the floor of the National Assembly, he votes along that line of things that he himself is opposing. And so it gives us the question of what actually is the use of these elites who are out there? What are they doing for us? And that is the reason why I still have a problem with the separatists, because what they have done is they have rather empowered this elite. The CPDM has benefited more from this crisis more than any other political party per se. The CPDM has solidified itself. Nobody would have imagined for 1 second that the CPDM will have control over the entire Northwest region. But thanks to the separatists, they are the ones who have control over the Northwest region and maybe even the Southwest region. These are some critical issues that we have to be looking at. Now, talking about the international organizations, I keep on saying that the problem of Cameroon will only be resolved by Cameroonians. It will be difficult for us to rely on the international community to do anything for us. As a matter of fact, the United Nations organizations hang on the clause of its, I don't know what they call it, hangs on that clause of saying that it is the internal affairs of the country. They hang on that, and therefore they wait for the president of the largesse of the president of the republic to invite them. And so if the president of the republic do not invite them, they do not come in. They see it as a problem of Cameroon. And therefore they stand on the sideline and they keep shouting, oh, you guys should come to the table. You guys should come to the table. And doing virtually nothing to force them to come to the table. There are a lot of things which, if they had done, would have forced them to come to the table. For example, you don't keep on giving loans to the Biya regime. And then you tell the regime, oh, come to the table, go to the table and solve the problem. And then you are giving them loan. The World Bank is there giving loan to the government. they have to put up some measures that will push the government to the wall and force the government to come to the table. They have to take measures to treat these guys in the diaspora, make them know that they don't have some kind of a safe harbor out here if they continue to do what they are doing. And when you do that, you force them to come to the table. But when they know that they are not being watched by anybody, they are not being controlled by anybody, that is why they act with a lot of impunity. The government do not think that anybody can put any pressure on her, to the extent that we find at some point a minister in Cameroon is going to threaten the ambassador of the United Nations of the United States. Those are things that happen because the international community had shown its weakness, and this has been the situation over the years. The the African Union, which many of us would have thought that this is a body, because they keep on shouting, oh, African problems should be solved by Africans. But then when we have a problem in Africa, the AU sits comfortably on the sideline and watch. It is unimaginable that this crisis in the north in Cameroon is getting to the point at which it is, and we are not hearing anything coming from the United Nations organization or from the African Union, and that is because they have this group of old leaders in the AU who protect each other, and so Biya is one of those people that they jealously protect, and they would therefore not want to do anything to hurt Biya or to hurt Biya's allies and stuff like that. So I would want to think that we Cameroonians, we have a responsibility to find a solution to this problem, because if we are waiting for the international community, I bet you I doubt if they are going to be of any good to us.
Bayan, many persons are becoming disillusioned. They have waited for the US, for the UK, for Germany, for the United Nations, and seemingly the international community is enjoying what's going on, because severally it has been reported that the war, the conflict, is one of the most neglected in the world.
Well, and that's where I agree with what he says, up to a point. I agree with him up to the point where he says it's our problem, we should make it what we expect it to be. I do not agree when he says that the international community has nothing to do with it. There is a point where you take it to the river, and then the ship carries the rest. I think this country is very little known, first of all. Cameroon is very little known in the world. If you see a similar situation happening in Ethiopia, in Tigray, the African Union of all has already called for an investigation over the role of the Ethiopian government and their Eritrean neighbors and friends. And you would ask the question, when did Tigray come? Well, Tigray is old, but I mean this wave is new. And here we have been for 4 years of an armed conflict, excuse me, and we don't seem to be impressing a lot. I think that is why you see this wave that is coming now. This wave is coming because the boys on the ground know, they've been told by their commanders abroad that they need to take this thing to the precipice. There is a tipping point where that clause of sovereignty doesn't hold anymore. If it gets really, really bad on humanitarian issues, the political phase of the UN will come into play and will not wait for the government to say come. The boys are aware, and that's why they are acting the way they are acting, because while it is true that there was a tactical retreat, which some people said the war was over, the struggle had failed, the boys are evidently acting like they know that the more they do, the quicker the international community can come in its full force. We know, of course, that it takes the Security Council, and you know that a veto by any of the permanent members. Acha is, I'm sure, is really more of a political scientist than a journalist. He knows this better than me, that the permanent members of the Security Council, once there's a veto, there's no move, and it's the Security Council that initiates these moves. And you know France would hesitate. Russia. For some strange reason. You have opposing forces in the Security Council who would agree over blocking anything against Cameroon. France for its traditional reason, Russia and China for their emerging reasons. But there are ways to crack that wall. I do not think that he talked about wanting to, they may want to protect the old man, reliable Paul Biya. We saw in Libya, China was against the invasion of Libya of Muammar Gaddafi, but when they saw that the chips were down, China was the first that went to Benghazi. Yes. China was the first.
They were supposed to veto.
China was the first. China was the first world power that went to Benghazi to make friends with the rebels. I think there is a point where if you pull your force, and that's where I agree with Ndifo, that it takes the action on the ground first. When the action on the ground has moved it to the precipice, those interests will begin to review their interests. They begin to see where they want to belong. There is no permanent position in international politics like in local politics. It's a game of interest, and when you push it to the precipice where it reaches breaking point, even those powers will begin to review their positions. I think we can get there.
Okay. Brian thinks we can get there. Lots of messages. I'll read them, I'm sure, if time permits. Now, there are persons who are also seemingly eating very fat from this. We are talking about the war economies who would not want this to end. He raised the issue of many persons who have made political gains through appointments, but there are people who are making real cash from what's happening.
Yes, I think for those who are making real cash, I just mentioned media persons. That one is already over. I think they are also making real cash, even if now. Yes, now when I say real cash, you know, cash is relative. You could describe it relative. There's somebody that 100,000 at a point in time could be like 1 million to him, while another person 1 million could be just like 1,000 francs to him. So it's in variable terms. Now, if you look at it, if you look even at the security sector, we know that many of them too are also making cash. I have a handful of cases where you realize that they are building now, they are constructing now. If you look at it, that aspect of what we call unprecedented security search in particular neighborhoods, be it in Boya, be it in Bamenda, at the end of it, those things always move with monies that transpire for those who have to free themselves for one reason or the other. So it gives them a lot of money, because before then you could have only police and journalists who could be on the road, but now even the military has a reason, has a right to check you or to search your house or to check your phone and all the like. So all of them, it's a whole ball game. As I said earlier, even bandits, because if you look at it, look at the recent kidnappings in Menchum Division. When some of them were intercepted in the West Region, of course, they revealed that they carry out the operations, they leave from there, they go to Menchum Division, carry out kidnappings, get their ransoms, and come back in their hideout. So you see that bandits to have their own role to play. Now, even kidnappers and those for ransoms, even what we call, because non-state armed actors, ambas will tell you that the real ambas don't kidnap, but at the same time you will find another group that comes up, and you find that some persons will kidnap, and they too are asking for money. So you see, it becomes complex because money is changing hands. Now, if it,
saying that those delegates were not taken by Amber?
No, that's not what I'm saying here.
Okay.
I'm saying that in the aspect of kidnappings, there are some who kidnap in the name of Amber fighters who are not Amber fighters, and there's likewise you have Amber fighters who can who easily carry the job too. Because all in all, from the footprints you get on the ground, it becomes complex now to exactly determine who is involved in what deal. But kidnappings and ransoms is what we know becomes the order of the day. So a man who could kidnap probably and ask 100,000, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, if that kind of person, if he makes that kind of money, you're not expecting him to see that the war comes to an end. It's just the same like we talk about politicians that we just mentioned here. For the case of politicians, I want to tell you, even in my village, we have politicians who came up not because they were supposed to be if things were normal. Which means the real actors who were supposed to be at the forefront got scared at a point in time, and they had now to send in those whom they thought could better play the game on the ground during the insecurity. It's the same thing in many other areas, in many other council areas, constituencies. We have new breed of parliamentarians or senators or whatever who came in, not because the old guards would have allowed them to come, but because the old guard had looked at the game, it was seemingly a little bit not very sure for them, and so they had to cede their positions to these persons. So they too have a role, because if you look at those kind of persons, they will tell you that Master, everything will be there, and it was sure for day for year. So they too, if you tell them, will this war come to an end, they will not accept. Now, Mr. Leo, when you go to administrative officials, I want to tell you that I have some friends who are administrative officials, without calling names, out of the two regions. And when we talk with them, they tell you that you see them having that envy of those who are on the ground. Now imagine that a minister is entitled only to a particular bodyguard, and sometimes not even up to the level of an adjutant chef. But now you see a Dio in Ginjikwa who moves with security officers not less than 10. I mean, you could even the Minister of Defense does not have that kind of those kind of guys he moves with. Now you see a mayor in an area like Mwa who cannot move alone. So instead is going out, he goes out with a contingent of security forces, and they become now his bodyguards automatically. Now, for those who enjoy this kind of largesse, these are the kind of person who will not want it to end, because they, first of all, the way they are living, they never dreamed they could have security guards. They never dreamed they could have this kind of entourage moving around them. At the same time, Mr. Leo, you remember when the war started, the head of state at a point in time gave special treatment to those administrative officials in these two areas. The first thing that came in before the presidential election during that period was that most of the officials had additional new cars from Yaoundé. Now, away from that, they have additional running budget, which is but normal, because their risk allowances will not be the same compared to a Dio who is in Douala 6 or who is in Douala 1. And so because of all of this, they too have a different sphere of influence. They enjoy power at a different level, and they enjoy some benefits alongside what we call a security benefits or risk allowances different. So if you look at this kind of persons, they will tell you that no, ça marche très bien. So if you look at it, Mr. Leo, it is a whole we have a whole lot of we have teams on the ground, and from different segments that will tell you that they need to go. Now, informants, for example, whether you are informants for Amber or you are informants for the government, those who could not have what it takes to get some small amount of money now are playing a major role of dishing information from this angle to this angle. They too are making money, Mr. Leo.
Okay.
And so it has become a source of employment, a source of additional finance that is running in. I have, you know, before a military officer, what they call army, you know how they used to live. But now, if you are an army officer and you are sent to Northwest Southwest, no, you make your money in less than no time, because you know that you could be part and parcel of the group that is going out for a common routine check.
But they are not the decision makers.
No, we're not talking about decision makers, Mr. Leo.
Those who are making big cash out of this.
No, Mr. Leo. Look, critically, if you look, I've been in Boya. The several rates in Munya that comes on unprecedented. I have persons on the ground who have paid 100,000, 200, 300,000 francs because either your ID card had expired, or at the time they were intercepting them, they had a TV in the house, or the TV set that was not having this document, and they said no, they have stolen it, and all the like. So, Mr. Leo, you are even talking, those at the top have their own monies they make, but those on the ground, they make it even in a very harsh manner, because they have what they call motive. They have to give you a reason for a particular crime. Okay. Look at it, we have university students in Boya. I was already there, I intercepted, I met a police vehicle, a van, that stopped some students at the university, and I went to the guy, I was asking, but what's the issue? Now, the man was so rude. Now I had to take it calmly, and I realized that he was asking some few guys to get into the van, because according to him, they have those let's say killings of images of what is happening on the field in their phones, and these are things on the social media. And I asked him, but these are students. They are indicating to you that they are from studying. So what is the issue? And he said, no, they should pay money here or nothing. When we went for a little bit, and they got to realize it's likely, probably because of, I tried to take it gently because you cannot force them. They had to understand, and the guys went. But now imagine how many of those guys are bundled in trucks every evening in Boya. I mean in Boya. And they go and they pay money. So these persons know that they come out every evening with their police van, with a Chalameri van. Before they go back, in their mind, they must go out with money.
Let me take a few
It's too bad.
Yeah. I think Sune and the guy in Northwest Regalia just nailed it. To me, they are the real elites in this context of elites not necessarily being financial influencers. These two guys have really mastered in and out of this crisis. These are some of the people the government needs to work with in order to end the conflict. Good evening to you. Findi says, tell Mr. Fa that there is no Douala 6 subdivision. Let him... Findi, good evening to you. I don't know.
Pays Douala 6B, he does not know.
Good evening, Mr. Kun. Keep up. Your program is fantastic. Hi to my good friend, the Kangaroo Man, and my brother from Guti, Asongani, writing from Tiko. Good evening to you, Asongani. Good evening, please. Can you help me to get to some of the guys? Okay. Please, you can only get to them after the program. Just send me a request on WhatsApp. I'll send you the numbers. Good evening, Mr. Leo. The question is, who is supposed to give the way to CRM to contribute in solving the Southern Cameroon problem? Did President Paul Biya consult any political party before declaring? Okay. Akol Ja is writing from Menka. Good evening to you. Is in political and sociological theories, an elite is someone with wealth or particular privileges and maybe some kind of skills. In the context of who can represent the people of the Northwest and Southwest regions, we look at it differently. It could be just a popular figure, an elder of good character in the regions. It must not be the political class in Yaoundé. An example of such a figure is the late Moulin Jolly Tumbe Kanatumi. Those are elites not from the political class in Yaoundé. Okay, thank you. Oops. This one reads, je m'appelle Chantal depuis Limbe. Que le Cameroun va vraiment mal. Je suis de tout cœur avec vous. Bonsoir à vous, Chantal. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and to everyone in the studio. Please, Mr. Liu, we should not be putting blames on the elect. There is not the one to put an end to this war in the Southwest and Northwest. The government are the people who don't want the war to end. Okay. You are writing from Kumba. Good evening to you. Good evening to you all in the studio, those who are supposed to dialogue and bring this bloody war to an end, about the Yaoundé, the Ambazonians or the separatist leaders in Kondengui, and the entire Cameroon government lives in Yaoundé. Let them leave their pride and go for a genuine dialogue. The government in place don't want the war to end. Wanda Maxell is writing from Bonamusadi, Douala. Good evening, Mr. Liu and the panelists and Pascal. I just want to point out that the fact that why is it that one of your panelists always argue with other panelists all the time? Okay. Good evening. Mr. Liu, let the Cameroonians give us a better definition of an elite and their role in the nation. Ma Bisson is writing from Kumba. Good evening to you, Ma Bisson. Good evening, Mr. Liu and your panelists. I like the way Mr. Atia is trying to put facts which the CRM will always go against, and more especially those who don't want the crisis to end. Okay. Good evening, Frank writing there. We may not have time to read most of the messages here. We're out of time. Atia Tilaris, let us look at what steps need to be taken by both sides to end the crisis.
I think that there's need for both sides to present their case. I'd propose that they should present their preconditions. If somebody feels that they want to dialogue, but they don't want to meet in Lagos, for example, that they think that we want to dialogue with government, we should meet in New York, we should either meet in Geneva or whatever. These preconditions are necessary because there's need for us to know what the non-state armed groups want. It should be in a document because the things that people wanted in 2016 have changed. Things have evolved. We cannot be saying that the grievances are already known, that all what people wanted are known. I'm not sure it is the case today because yesterday the field marshals did not exist, the generals, the commanders, and every kind of people who have emerged today, and they may also have their own grievances. So this class of people should present their grievances in a document with the preconditions that if there's a dialogue, this is what we need, this is what we need. They present their case. The government on their part should also present their case. When the non-state armed groups present their preconditions and their conditions or demands, they should also present their list of at least 5 mediators or minimum 3, that possible mediators in a possible dialogue. And then the state government should also do same. When they do this, we can have some intersection. If everybody says, okay, Switzerland should mediate, and then Switzerland should mediate, and the government should send a delegation, the non-state armed groups should send a delegation, and they meet at table, and they start ironing out the issues gradually, because it is difficult to say that there should be dialogue, no preconditions, and all of those things. It is always very difficult to have dialogue without preconditions. And I'm not sure that somebody who wants to liberate the people and at the same time kill them, I'm not sure that the state, whose role is to protect the people, would turn around and watch them die. No state will want to do that. And no people who want to liberate people will also turn around and make them suffer. So in that context, both parties have an interest to go to dialogue. And they should come to dialogue now. I'm sure that after the 2019 dialogue meeting in Yaoundé, the consultation and all of those things, there is already some progress that has been made on the part of those who are for the status quo as it is to exist, one indivisible Cameroon, whether it's federation or whatever, regionalism or decentralization. They can now put these documents together and meet somewhere. And I think that we must not have physical meetings. They can begin with holding meetings with those who are on the ground. Sisiko, Ayuktabe and others are already here. Government are here, had discussions with them. But then there is need for the non-state armed groups to know that there's need for confidentiality of proceedings. If, for example, I'm a minister, I've been sent to discuss with non-state armed groups, and I call you on phone and you record my call, the next moment it is floating on social media, you breach confidentiality and you make it difficult for progress. So there's need for these non-state armed groups and their leaders to understand that in the managing statecraft, there's need for things to be done through following procedures for confidentiality, because there are things that the masses do not need to know at a particular time, because if they know at that time, it's going to disrupt the flow of or the process of discussion. When it emerged on the media that Sisiko and others had met with some government officials to discuss, that was not the first time they were meeting with those officials to discuss. But because it's leaked out, everything has stopped. There is now a deadlock. I'm not sure that people who leaked it out are happy that deaths, people keep on dying, people are dying every day, people are suffering, children have not gone to school about 5 years now. There's poverty. In fact, I'm not sure that in Northwest and Southwest regions we have even a hospital. What we have are just clinics because they are struggling, low capacity, low equipment, low medical personnel. So there's need for everybody to come to the dialogue table. And so the separatists or whoever they are, they should present their preconditions and put their demands straight. Government should do same. Get mediators and meet. And if they cannot meet physically because of the tensions, that they can start fighting, like we saw how people fought in Belgium in 2019 during the pre-consultations ahead of the dialogue. They can do virtual calls when they have built confidence. They can now meet in person and see how they can iron out the issues, because it's a process and we cannot keep on killing ourselves waiting that the white man is going to come and say that, oh, the war has ended. Because the same white man we are counting on are the same people who are selling arms, who produce arms. And when people produce arms, they don't eat arms. There's need for war or insecurity for arms to be given. And those who are killing civilians under the guise that government is going to appear weak and desperate, they should not forget that when a state like Cameroon, that is very influential in the Gulf of Guinea, when it starts facing serious problems like this one, the West is going to arm Cameroon. It's going to give support to ensure that the state survives. Because if Cameroon were to crumble, given the situation we have in the Gulf of Guinea, then Africa will be in a very desperate situation. All of us have seen how Libya. I'm not sure the world is happy with what is happening in Libya today, and I'm not sure they will want such a thing to happen to Cameroon. So the non-state armed groups should see this and see how they can preserve the lives that we have and go to the dialogue table and discuss. Esther,
writing from Yaoundé, says, good evening, Mr. Liu, and to the panelists especially. One to Kangaroo Man. Nice topic. We are following the program. Okay. Daisy, writing from Kumba, says, good evening, Mr. Liu, and to all the panelists. Those who don't want the war to end are those who are benefiting from the war. Say Kangaroo Man and Mr. Atia will not leave him so no. Sumbele Kelvin, writing from Kong Samba, says, Mr. Liu, please take a short break to calm down tension in the studio. Okay, the tension is gone. Kelvin, glad to know that you always watching the program. Oops. Ngupo Ngong, writing from Kumba, says, good evening, Mr. Liu. Special greetings to the Kangaroo Man. He speaks the mind of many of us. Okay, you are writing from Akale Street. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Mr. Sone gave a good definition of an elite and is an eloquent speaker. I'm Abanda, ex-teacher of Mr. Sone. Okay, good evening to you. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and all, especially to the definition of an elite in Cameroon is not more the dictionary type. It is one from the CPM. The Prince is writing from Bamenda. Julius Chofo, writing from the UK, says, good evening, Mr. Liu. Your new panelist, Mr. Sone, is breath fresh air. I hope we will see more of him. Okay, Sone, those are the televiewers writing here.
I just want to say that Asia has made the assumption that when I know he's talking about the Yaoundé talks, right? the one supposedly that took place at the cathedral or under the auspices of the Archbishop of Yaoundé. And you're assuming that it's the separatist leaders who leaked it. I think it's very improbable that they did. You would know who would leak that. It's the hawks in the government who didn't want that dialogue, who leaked that information to sabotage it. So be very careful. Secondly, he's making prescriptions of things that have already passed. The Swiss initiative had gone very far.
Okay.
And all the preliminaries have been done. There were third parties, there were mediators, At this level, it was mediation. There were mediators, and all of the preconditions are on the table. We just have not been told because we are not involved. But those who are involved know that this whole thing has gone to a certain level. And if we haven't gone across the bridge, it's not because these things have not been said. It's because on both sides you have people who don't want the war to end.
Okay.
Especially, as we said, the hawks in the government don't want the war to end, and the people who are benefiting, those who are getting promotions, those who are even hoping to get further promotions. Yes, some people want to be ministers of defense, some people want to be prime minister. They want the prime minister to look like he's not competent for the position, and they want to become prime minister. All of those people are looking at their personal interest, special interest, and are looking at the bigger picture. But they're the ones who go on the soapbox and make it sound like they care for the people, and some people don't care for the people. This war, if someone wants this war to end within a year, it will end.
Okay.
They don't want the war to end.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I love your program. Keep up. Ayon Franklin, writing there from the U.S. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm writing from the United Arab Emirates. Good evening to you too. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Please ask the gentleman to advise his team to come for dialogue, and they will see our representatives. Banji is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening to you, Banji. I don't know who your representatives are. And take a few. Mr. Leo, good evening. Sir, please can you send me the number on WhatsApp? No, I will do that after the program. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Please, I have an observation whenever you bring some people. There is quarrel. Thanks. Binui is writing from Moi. Okay, good evening, Mr. Liu. Tell Mr. Atia to calm down. Okay, Manel Kim is writing from Bamenda. Hello, Mr. Liu. Why are you not reading my messages? I think Mr. Atia is defining something else. Elite is defined solely in terms of political influence and material wealth. What about those who educate, advocate, and serve as role models? Okay. I cannot read all the messages. There are so many. Please just bear with me. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Everyone in the positions of authority do not want the bloodshed to end because they are benefiting in one way or the other. I think it is time for the population to go and march like they did in 2017 because they are the highest losers. Bless is writing from Bamenda. For Richard, what should be the way forward for a definite end to the crisis?
Yeah, Leonard, the definite end to this crisis will only come if the different parties acknowledge that they cannot continue standing on the positions where they're standing. The separatists should be able to move to the center. The government should be able to move to the center. And at the center, they can find a middle position. Just to quickly say that when we talk of a dialogue to solve this problem, this dialogue needs to be genuine. And I think there is a reason why everybody who talks about the dialogue adds an adjective genuine to it. And the reason is because the government seems to be trying to play around the whole issue of dialogue. And so the government needs to be very clear and know that if we are talking about dialogue, it shouldn't be who is to be involved. It shouldn't be a national dialogue, so to speak. If there are any problems that are national, let us solve the problem of the Anglophones because they are the ones agitating. The entire Cameroon nationally did not come out to protest. Anglophones protested, or Southern Cameroonians, so to speak. So they should talk with the Anglophones. And in talking with them, they should look at the root cause of the problem. What is it that brought us where we are today? So those are the key elements. We must look at the root cause of the problem. We must go back to history. And any solution that has to come out, there is no way we can manage this thing up without some kind of amendment of the Constitution. There must be some kind of amendment of the Constitution. There must be some kind of reorganizing of how the form of the state is. Because those are the core issues. If we don't touch these very core issues, anything else we are talking about, we are just playing to the gallery. And we'll keep moving back and forth, and we'll finally not get to the point. So I think that the separatists, they are calling for secession. They should know that the secession cannot come right now. The government is talking about decentralization. The government should understand that decentralization, and especially decentralization in the form in which they jealously want it to be, is very difficult to obtain in the present context, and for this war to end. And so for that reason, both should abandon those extreme positions that they hold, and they move a little bit to the center, and we find a middle position. It is only by so doing that we are going to genuinely have a sustainable solution, because it is not just about looking for a solution. It is about looking for a sustainable solution, a solution that in the next 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 100 years, we will not be having to come back to this same position to talk about the same situations as we have it.
Okay.
So I think that the highest responsibility lies on the part of the government. And when I say it lies on the part of the government, I say so because the government should know that they are an equal party to this conflict, and they are not an authority to the conflict. They are an equal party, and so therefore they should not decide who should attend and who should not attend. They can decide who should attend on the side of the government, but they should allow the other side, the Anglophones or English-speaking Cameroonians, decide who they want to be part of their delegation, and then they sit at the table. Okay. It should not be the government crossing over to the other side and dictating who should come to dialogue with them.
Okay. He's talking about moving towards middle ground for both sides. How do we, practically speaking, what do we mean by that? What are the steps that should be set as having been taken on both sides towards the middle ground?
You know, I said very early in this program that deadlock begets deadlock. Mm-hmm. And there is no evidence that the government even has a position. So in the government there is a deadlock. Within the government there is a deadlock. You know, of course, within the separatists there is a deadlock. In the sense that you don't have, we have Siseko as the interim president who is in detention. We have a new interim leader who is Sako. We have the man who we understand or who we believe has more boots on the ground, Chua Yaba. We have Akwanga Ebenezer who has his own troops on the ground. We have many factions on the ground. Is there a unified force? Not very clear.
We saw that division when it was announced that the government engaged Ayuk Tabi, and others were quick to say no.
It doesn't speak for us, you know, that kind of thing. So, in a genuine process, look, the Ambazonia crisis is not initiated.
So you're talking about that some who said will never come to the Swiss. Yeah.
All of that is part of, those are the dynamics of a conflict. The Ambazonia crisis is just one other conflict in the world. The world knows how to handle issues like this. There's just a lack of the will and the diverse interest. Ambazonia crisis is not a difficult crisis for the world to handle. The world has handled Palestine, Israel. The world has handled Eritrea, Ethiopia. The world has handled Sudan, South Sudan. The world has handled Indonesia, East Timor. The world has handled all kinds of conflicts. And as I say again, Achia is a political scientist. I think I'm the only journalist here because he's a political scientist and Far Elvis is a politician. I'm the only free journalist here. This conflict is not too complicated to handle. It's the lack of a will that is holding it where it is. When the dynamics will be put on the ground and action takes off, this problem will be solved.
Okay.
And it will be solved. We don't know which way it will go. Mind you, like Andifo said, that's the name of my older brother, there are extremes, but at some point it's not necessarily people coming to the center. It can sway one way or the other. It can be a status quo situation. We stay with even a unitary state because that's still where we are. We are not yet decentralized. We can stay with a unitary centralized state. We can go regional or decentralized. We can go federal, whether it is 10 states or 2 states or how many states, and we can go confederal. I think this is the position of a regular guest on this program, Dr. Nick Guanyam, as well as we can have a separate state emerge. None of them is new in the world. The world has seen all of this, and it has happened.
The only way forward is simple. You only take your pens and papers and listen and take notes and follow it as you, if you like. Point number 1 is for the fact that the government must understand that there are 2 main parties here. We could call them the restorationists and the government itself. Point number 2 is for the government to take a lead. Because they have the knife and the yam, and not to wait for the separatists or the restorationists to come to take the lead. They are the ones to take the lead. And point number 3, they must be able to take another giant step in softening the tension. They release all political prisoners in connection with this current crisis, meaning they'll be looking at the Ayuk Tabe and co and the rest who are connected to it. It would do a lot of good, including even the members of CRM. And another development, the government should also make sure that they carry out they put in place a measure which will allow the restorationists or the Amazonians to come in with their own representatives and not to be influenced. And then another thing we think the government should do is that they should be down with following these points. They can now put in place or agree on a particular venue. Remember, in a dialogue, 2 persons are discussing, not 1 person dictating. And so in this case, both of them can now agree on a particular venue for the mediation. And then, of course, we talk about the issues of mediators. I want to let it clear that the issue of the Swiss-led talk is still under controversy because one faction is not with it, another one was it. So the government could take everything from square one and make sure that by the time you align them to choose their representatives, when they come, they will not come in one piece, because you will have all of them from the various factions represented when they are coming forward to see you, the government. And then another aspect which is very important is the aspect of ceasefire. When you've agreed with mediators and the venue and even the date, the next thing now is that you discover the ground is gradually being softened because they now know that something ahead is coming. As a result of this, with the mediators agreed by both of you and not determined by Yaoundé alone, ceasefire will now be the next step. After the ceasefire, Yaoundé regime will now have to put in place, or as proposal, what they call a buffer zone. Because in the buffer zone, it will now mean that they will not be able to carry on shooting or actions in all the areas, but there should be the areas which will be called protected zones. In that case, they could now case students or those who are going to school in a particular area. I think if they do all of this, and then with the issue of reconciliation commission put in place, and finally reconstruction will come the last. If not, the government will be dancing a kangaroo dance.
I see one minute, please.
Yes, I think the government should unite. We've had reports, I've read in Afrique, a lot of reports suggest that the Prime Minister and the Secretary General of the President of the Republic are in the talk of war. The Prime Minister has an approach to solve the crisis. The SG, the presidency, has another approach, according to Jeune Afrique. I think there's need for a united action from the part of government. While they are engaging with the non-state armed groups, whether they are fragmented or not, there's need for government to be united, to have a united position. And the way it seems, it will appear that it's an Anglophone problem. It should be left in the hands of Anglophones. Because since this crisis started, we've not had the Speaker of National Assembly come to Northwest and Southwest. He should lead a parliamentary inquiry to come and find out what is happening. The President of the Senate, it appears that they are aloof. They only know how to go and dance at the Reunification Monument. That was in 2017. But the concrete issues, they have not handled them. And I think that because it's about issues of law, how the country should be managed, how the form of state should look like, there's need for all the arms of government to be involved, parliament, the judiciary, and the executive. And so while government is uniting, the separatists should also unite, and let's see how we can look for a solution to the crisis.
Okay. Hi, Mr. Leonard. I'm John from Germany. The day that you will stop inviting people who think that always blaming the government is the way forward, peace will come to the Southwest up to 80%, and Northwest have at least 40% peace. 95% of the suffering today in the Southwest and Northwest is caused by it's caused by separatists and their supporters. Okay, we are going to be ending the program at this.
Can I say one word? Just to say, I don't believe in it. My philosophy of life is no devil, no angel.
Okay.
And within this government, there are people you can count on.
Okay.
If they're given the political support. I said the day the Prime Minister was appointed, John Goten, Prime Minister, I wrote an article on Facebook and I said, this is one member of this government who masters this dossier. You knew all of the issues in the Gambia, in the court of the Banjul, where the SCNC took these issues. He was Minister Delegate for Commonwealth. He's the one who followed up on these things. He masters this dossier, and I think even as a character, you saw the way he came when he came out on his tours. I don't know about others, but I think that he has the disposition, and personally I know him. I think he has the disposition to be able to reach across. I think the government should give him the support he needs. Okay. Let's see him fail before we think the whole government has failed. Okay. I don't know who else can do better.
Okay, we are going to be ending at this juncture. We want to say thank you to you, Sone, for coming. Bayan.
Pleasure.
Okay, and also to you, the Kangaroo Man.
Yes, thank you very much. Special greetings to J. Kennedy, who is watching us live, and Tifu Juan from Limbe.
Okay, thank you, Ati, for coming.
Thank you, and I pray that we'll put lives ahead of personal interest.
Okay, and for Richard, thank you for participating this evening.
Thank you so much, Leonard, and I want to thank the other members of the panel up there in the studio, and to thank our viewers for their time. Thank you so much.
Okay, I want to thank you all who took time off to watch the program, and to the production team, Eli and Desmond, everybody working at the broadcasting, you, Tabi, Tambe Bryant. We say thank you. Stay blessed. Bye bye.
Embrace its academic and professional reputation that has trained over 15,000 professionals in 10 years. Embrace HITMAT's numerous professional programs from HND to BTech, BSc, and MBA in the schools of Business and Management Sciences, Engineering and Technology, and the School of Transport and Logistics. Embrace HITMAT's professionalism, excellence, and consistency with solid mentorship from the University of Bamenda and the University of Boya. Embrace HITMAT's skills, development, expertise, and career orientation via workshops and academic field trips. Be part of the HITMAT family. Visit our Boya campus at Checkpoint Moliko and Douala campus at Carrefour Yoro, Jos, Bonamusani. Contact 683-70-1720. The Higher Institute of Business Management and Technology, the University Institute for Professionals.